And welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Health Made Simple show. I am here with my host, Dr. Bart Precourt, who has been a healthcare practitioner for over 20 years, practicing a range of modalities, including chiropractic, kinesiology, acupuncture, functional nutrition and supplementation, as well as lab testing, all out of his clinic, Balance Health Studio in Seagrove Beach, Florida, as well as virtually all around the world. So he's also the founder of the Health Edge program, which is a cutting edge health program for entrepreneurs and executives wanting to take their health to the next level. He's worked with athletes and celebrities all around the world, and sounds like he's got a lot to share with us tonight. So let's dive in.
Well, at least I have a lot that's up in here that I've been like, especially when I go away for a weekend. I think everyone could probably like when I get away, and especially I took a long drive, so it's about a 5-hour drive. And it was just me and one of my dogs. So of course I brought a dog, right? So
you can have dogs in the hotel?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Well, yeah, of course you can.
Awesome.
Like why can't you? So yeah, I brought George with me. Yeah. And George sat in on an 8-hour seminar. So
oh, really?
Yeah. He was a trooper, an absolute trooper.
Just chilled out the whole time. Actually, I think my puppy would.
I wouldn't say he chilled out the whole time.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. So anyway,
the star of the seminar.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, absolutely. Definitely. Because, bulldogs, they're not quiet. So
we've all learned that through this show process.
Yeah. So he's in the back of the room the whole time. And I was like, I wonder if anyone else can hear me. Like making noises and snoring and licking his paws and all that kind of stuff. So
everyone could hear him.
Yeah.
Everyone.
No doubt. Yeah. So that was good. And we'll dive into that a little bit. And that was all about, I was looking forward to this for a while. It was a great gentleman. His name was Dr. Chance, a real smart guy. And he taught about this hypothalamus, how to reset the hypothalamus, the HP axis. And we'll dive into that in just a little bit here. And maybe many people might not even know what that is, but I'll make sure we do, because it is so important, especially moving forward in this time and day, understanding what the HP axis is, which is really the mother or the control board of our entire endocrine system, which controls all our hormones. So we'll dive into that a little bit. But first, let's talk about my clinical insight. And this isn't like, I wish this was like a huge win one, but it's a different type of clinical insight, but it's a real clinical insight, about something that, it took place today in clinic. And then I'll share this kind of parlays into something I experienced over the weekend at the workshop as well. So today when I was practicing, one lady came in and she was in our second visit for her shoulder. And the clinical insight is really about how critically important and how much we have to understand our self-talk, how we talk to ourselves. I'll start by saying this, that the body believes every word you say, and whatever you say the most, it's going to go with that concept. That's what we call psychosomatic, meaning psycho, the mind, soma, the body. And if you say, man, I feel old and I'm not feeling good, and you say it enough, more than you say, oh, I'm feeling good today. If you say that enough, your cells will take on those words and those beliefs. And it's real. It is as real as that, there's, I don't know, like eating a hamburger, like it is that real, the impact on your body. So, and I think the more that we move forward, especially after a year where we thought the virus is the biggest thing, then we realized how impactful the fear of the virus, how impactful that was. So anyways, in this particular situation, wonderful lady, yeah, the concepts and the beliefs and the conversation that she has with her body is like many others, where it's not a good one. Meaning this, Karen, that she was like, oh, my shoulder's still bothering me. There's something wrong with my shoulder. And then she just rambled. So I'm going to say all that she said, and I'm paraphrasing something. So there's something wrong with my shoulder. Ever since I turned 50, everything just going to hell. There must be something wrong with it. Maybe I need a new one. I don't know. But I tell you what, if this gets any worse, I think I'm going to die. That was literally the words coming out of her mouth.
We do spiral.
Yeah. Now I see this pattern all the time. And the way that I practice, and a lot of the men and women that practice like I do that are recognizing and honoring the fact that it is how we move, it is how we eat, but it is also how we think. And if I just skip over that, I could have just given her every supplement under the world and done any therapy and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, until that part of it is addressed, I don't care how magical my therapy may be. It's not really going to do the job on the shoulder. It may parlay it a little bit, but it's not going to fix it. So here's what made this even trickier. So I'm used to this. So I do it. So I have to play like these, like mind tricks to interrupt and do different types of questioning back. And that's like some of my old hypnosis training and stuff like that. So I'm prepared for it. The challenge is this time her husband came with her to this visit, not because, I don't know, he was just there. Well, actually, he was getting adjusted as well for the first time. And then they were both talking about how bad her shoulder was and all these things. So I had to, then ask what I call unrefutable questions that don't have options. It's like, Karen, how old are you? And there's only one option. It's unrefutable. You tell me how old you are. So these things kind of calm the mind down. And so I go through these series of these different questions in just in conversation so I could get her out of this spiral. And that's a good analogy, spiral of where she was headed. Then I start to ask her some unrefutable questions just about her body. How long have you had your body? How long have you been treating it good? And these start to kind of bridge the gap to conversations of maybe I should talk to my body a little bit different. So in this one, it was double difficult because I had to work on the concepts of both the husband and the wife of how they view human health. And this is really the clinical insight, because so often, and so everyone listening tonight and everyone, that's here, we're going to be listening to something, recording something. Think about how you talk to yourself, the questions you ask yourself. If you're asking yourself, and I get them, like if you're saying things like, what's wrong with my shoulder, man? Something must be wrong. I don't feel good. That conversation doesn't lead to anywhere good. The simple fix is simply asking ourselves the question, what does my body need right now? What's it asking? What's going on? And when we start to ask it with a little bit of a tone change, and then also a little bit of a different question, we can get different answers. So I was able to break that gap. And by the end of it, had her talking away a little bit about her body that was a little bit more nice, quite frankly. She wasn't like, it's interesting. Some people act as if like literally like her and I said this to you earlier, she was acting like there was an alien on her shoulder, like this foreign thing was attached to her shoulder that like she didn't want anything to do with it if it wasn't, kind of complying to her normal lifestyle, et cetera. So that was one situation today that I think is worthy for me sharing with everyone, that how you talk about your body and how you reference it and the concept that you have around your own health and your diagnoses and all of those things, they are playing a role. And I didn't mean it to fit in this way, but I want to share something that took place over the weekend. It was completely random. So here we are in a room of, it's, 30, 40, 50 doctors, which is pretty cool because when we all get together, we geek out. That's the truth. Like we dive deep into different cases. And for the most part, we all become each other's patients and we use the cases because we're real humans as well that have issues and whatnot. So while we're at this seminar, one of the guys who puts a seminar, who we've had here, I think we've had Alan, I don't know if we've had Alan here on our show before, but we should get him on. This guy is just a wealth of knowledge. Yeah, we've had Alan here. Anyways, Alan brings this, what's called a heart recorder. And one of the things he does for all the attendees is he'll do recording on the heart. And what it does, it gives feedback of the different, like the waves, almost like if you're looking at an AFib and the way that you would like look at a normal heart chart, like, and you see the little, things going up and down and whatnot. Well, it does the same type of reading. What's fascinating about it is that then based on the reading, the clinician, like in this case, Alan would then be able to say, well, I tell you what, to help the function of the heart, again, we're not treating disease or anything, to say to help the function of the heart and help this rhythm over here, take a little of these B vitamins, take some magnesium, and then patient after patient after patient, you literally see the chart change. Crazy. And not in 10 hours, awesome. Not 10 days, not 10 months.
Yeah, but right away.
Yeah. And what's so profound about that is that it shows without a shadow of a doubt how important everything we put into our body is.
Yeah.
Because when we flip that over and then have someone drink a soda and do the same thing, and it's completely irregular. So although, now some people are tuned into their bodies and they're eating organic foods and they're mindful of what they're doing, and it's art. It's a practice over time. And then they can tell, man, I just ate something wasn't good there. Or they went out to eat and they asked for something that didn't have canola oil and they got it, and they can tell because they're that tapped into their body about what comes in. So that's really fascinating. I'm setting up why I'm sharing this. And I totally had a lot of stuff I want to share. So anyways, and then this little, I call her little, she's a doctor. She's like 35-year-old doctor, just small frame. She's probably 105 pounds soaking wet. And it's her turn. So she just, it's voluntary. You go up there, you kind of like get your strap on, and it's kind of off to the side of the room. And I was watching Alan and his assistant, who's another doctor, this person was taking a little longer than normal. They were giving her this vitamin, B vitamin. You could tell that didn't fix this, didn't fix the recorder. Like it didn't fix the, the reading that they were getting. Then tried some magnesium and then some trace minerals, all the kind of the usual suspects that help is significantly help and balance out heart regulation quickly. Saw them do some adrenal stuff, and I'm paying attention because I'm in the back with George anyway. So I'm like getting a whole view of the room. And I see him going on. And I basically see him after like 30, 40 minutes of doing this, kind of like, I don't know.
Can't make any changes.
Yeah, can't make any changes. But sure enough, we got 40 plus doctors in the room, right? So
I love it.
Yeah. So inevitably, one of the doctors in the room was an instructor for a technique called NET, neuro emotional technique. Fascinating work. And really the goal there is to get to the deep root of where there are certain emotions or patterns that are taking place that are literally interrupting and disrupt neurotransmitters, disrupt the central nervous system. Best said, it sounds airy-fairy, but really disrupt the energy flowing through the body. And really all we are is an electrical circuit. That's it. We're just energy flowing. And if that energy gets blocked or dysregulated or shut down, anyway, we function differently. So anyways, Alan says, hey, can you see what's going on here? If there's anything you can do here. And, of course, we're all geeking out like, yeah, let's see what's going on. And she volunteers, and it's very humbling, because now you're center of attention, and you become a patient in front of 40 others. So very blessed that she gave us this experience. So he goes through this technique and he uses a little muscle testing, some old school kinesiology stuff, very effective, very, very interesting the way that the body responds with muscle testing. And next thing you know, Karen, it's being narrowed down, and found out that the deep seed was in family, and the deep seed was in it was kind of like a missing out. I forget the word that they were using. We'll just call it missing out. So she had this sense of missing out or not being fulfilled. And as we get deeper and deeper, it popped up that she had a hysterectomy. Wow. So the word was abandonment. So they found out the emotion she was experiencing was abandonment. So what was real fascinating is she was cool as ice. Okay. Yeah. Very put together, glasses, like, just, 105-pound little powerhouse. Right. Yeah. And we're going through these different, like, well, is it this? Is it this? Is it this? And then sure enough, and the gentleman who's doing the muscle testing says, is this deep-seated in your family? Boom. Tears rolling down her face. It was just like that. So obviously there was an emotional something taking place deep-seated here. And then it got to the emotion of abandonment. And then what a little bit later discovered, now remember, there's no history, there's no paperwork here, just muscle testing, conversation, irrefutable questions. It's a very neat technique, I would say that. Next thing you know, we discovered that she had a hysterectomy. I don't know the history behind it, but at 32 years old, Devastating. And she always wanted to have children. Yeah. And that just came to the table right then and there, which was absolutely fascinating. And again, it was almost this gift that this poor girl suffering, a gift to the 40, 50 doctors in the room. And then they go back, of course, and they go through the whole thing and they clear the pathway energetically. That's the really cool part. That's for a different conversation. But they clear the pathway energetically, go back to the heart recorder, cool as ice.
Yeah. Isn't that amazing?
Just the
Wow.
emotions, just the emotions.
Yeah.
And so for all of you out there, think like and I'm not saying we have to go on a deep dive of what happened in our childhood or anything like that,
Yeah.
but maybe sometimes we do a little bit better job at being aware of the emotions that we're carrying, the things that we're hiding from, the things that we're burying, the things that we got covered, that kind of stuff, or the amount of stress. Like this past year, I'm always interested this year when I talk about stress in the clinic, which is every single day.
Oh yeah.
And I say, well, and they're like, I don't know what's going on. I'm just not right, or whatever. So you have any stress? And they're like, well, I'm like, come on. Like if you've been a human on this earth in the past 2 years, you got stress.
You've got some sort of stress.
You got stress.
Yeah. Yeah.
And unfortunately, most of the time, stress is acknowledgeable if it's in one of two categories, meaning that if it's financial stress or relationship stress. So those are like acceptable forms of stress, but every other stress is not like worthy of talking about for some weird reason. So I'm blown away by how many people don't address the fact that they're under some kind of duress or having conversations every night about this pandemic, a mask or not a mask, closing down, jobs, kids, whatever it may be. So
there's so much fear. I mean, people are scared all the time.
Yeah, all the time. And that, and again, we'll go into that in just a minute. If you have some questions, I want to get those answered, but then I want to go into what is this HP access, and really also want to have a conversation about the impact that's been had or having right now on our adrenals as a result of being in this unknown, uncertain territory for the last 2 years, and especially when it comes to long haul. So if you have any questions, let's dive into those real quick. We'll knock those out, and then I want to circle back to these because I think they're really important for us to really understand, especially as we move forward and navigate these. Who knows what's next?
Who knows what's next is right. But no, I love that conversation. I think it doesn't even have to be in health. All our self-talk and kind of emotional health needs a look at, right? And a reminder.
Always.
Always. Because also when I hear it, I'm like, oh yeah, like, like each time I hear it, I think that I'm aware, and then you get into day to day, you get busy, and you don't, if you think back, you're like, yeah, need to be on point with some of the things that I'm saying to myself.
Yeah. The body believes everything we say, and especially if we say it more often than other things. So if we were saying that, my shoulder's killing me, my shoulder's killing me, my shoulder's killing me. And every now and then, because you feel like you need to be positive, you're like, no, I love my shoulder. But it's just that one moment. And then really all the other conversations about how bad it is, that's your physiology will start to reflect that, and whether you have that awareness or not.
Yeah. And we do have some questions, but just before that, especially the thing around age, like I feel like so many just expect certain things, like expect to be on medications as they get older, expect their body to be sore as they get older, if you expect those things to happen as you get older, like they're going to happen, right? Like they expect, of course, my blood pressure is going to go up when I get older. Of course, this is going to it's expected that these things happen. And there are changes when you get older. Okay. You might not quite be like you're 20. I'm sure you have to acknowledge that, if that's the word, but So the thing about aging in this last like 6 months is really, maybe a year, is really giving me a different perspective on things. One, because we have so many men and women that would be considered old, like they're 50 plus, that are literally thriving. And, we see with the cleanse, we finished up the cleanse last night. We just see so many people literally thriving, like 70 years old, knocking out 50 push-ups, breaking those paradigms. Better than the 20-year-olds.
Right. Yeah. So there's that. And it is important that we acknowledge, because it has really not much to do with age at all. Now, age is a process, no doubt, just like any other. And it is really the cumulative effects of what we do with our age. And the more we start to have that true conversation, like for me, I know that I put my body through some physical stuff, since I've been on face of this earth. But so I'm now practicing kind of like catch up. I'm trying to swing the pendulum back into my favor. And that concept excites me because I'm like, I can swing it back twice as fast as I beat it up. Because I don't have another 50 years that I want to work, I want to, move it as fast as can be. So that concept, and you're right. And that's where I think it's the programming that the whole system makes aging almost as if it's a disease, as if you're
Yeah.
going to get these different things that kind of pop up. But I am crystal clear. It's not age, and it could be, if you need it as an excuse, it's there for you. Put it that way. It is there for you if you need it as an excuse. But everything else about age, we know what it's bringing. We know, yes, there's some fundamentals that maybe your stomach acids will start to decline a little bit, maybe your testosterone declines, but there's strategies for all of that. So we don't necessarily have to have the health declines or the lack of joy in life either, because we can really, now that we're smarter, in theory, right, that we can do a lot more with it. All right.
Yeah, 100%. Okay, should we move into some questions then?
Yeah, let's fire some questions.
Okay. I've got a question here. For someone who is not necessarily dairy intolerant, but is reducing dairy due to its effect on inflammation, is butter still okay to consume?
Yeah, butter's almost always fine. And yes, it does, it does come from a cow, right? So, but nonetheless, it's fine. In most of the simplest way to say that the fat and the protein are still intact. So it's not been broken down. So that doesn't make it, degenerated or anything like that, or a source that the body can't function with. Most importantly, it has very, very little, less than 1% lactose. And that's very similar to cheese as well. So typically for someone that wants to go dairy free, does perfectly fine with butter, perfectly fine.
Oh, and cheese then?
Cheese, cheese falls into a category, Karen, that it gets a bad rap because we abuse it. And we abuse it. Yeah. And we're not eating necessarily grass-fed organic cheese. Yeah. So, when we go out for pizza, that's not grass-fed organic pizza. And here in America, we got Karen, we got orange cheese. There's no orange cows.
Hey, the first time I came to the US and saw the orange cheese, it was Canada actually, because they have orange cheese too. Yeah. The whole North America does the orange cheese thing. Nowhere else in the world does the orange cheese. Like, why do you guys do the orange cheese? It blew my mind. I was like, what is this? Do you eat this? Like, I was like very confused.
Yeah. So not so great, the orange cheese. But there are,
you color it to make it orange, but I don't get it. I don't get it, guys. There you go. That's the Australian comment on orange cheese.
But cheese can fall into that category. I really think clinically, what I typically say is that if you have the wherewithal to use it in moderation, that's a big part of being able to have a healthy relationship with cheese in your diet. I do see things, a lot of people that are, like going through like a keto program or something like that, abuse cheese, and it backfires on them. So, it's not supposed to be a meal. But if you have it in your salad and stuff like that, it's fantastic. It can be. It can be. Yeah.
Same as butter. It's all about making sure it's grass-fed.
Correct. Grass-fed and organic. So the source that they come from, and we talked about this last night as we closed up this year's cleanse, with a real heavy emphasis this year to make sure that we're eating organic the whole year, like every year, every meal, because the truth is, if it's not organic, you're voluntarily putting a poison into your body. And, I know that sounds kind of harsh. And at the same time, that we have to start to think to some degree that there's a responsibility and choices that we can make there if we really want to achieve some optimal health. We have to, like, where we can make differences, we should be making them. And that's one of the ones we can make a difference. Or even in a small town like this, our grocery stores, relative to 10 years ago, are doing an amazing job having all kinds of organic opportunities. So we can't say it's harder, and you can't say it's more expensive. It is actually the real cost of food is organic. Yeah. The cheap, poisonous, toxic, chemical laden, GMO'd food is the cheap stuff. So, so there, let's continue to eat cleaner and cleaner.
And the more we do, the more that becomes available. You guys have, in general, supermarkets more organic foods than we do. Really, we're a little bit behind there. But I just think of the example with like free range eggs. Back in the day, there would only be like cage eggs option in this one free range egg here, and then people started just buying out that free range egg, and the cage eggs would sit there. Now, it's more than 50-50, mostly free range eggs, a few brands of cage eggs, and that's it when you go into just a normal, Safeway supermarket, because people started buying that. If we do it, it does start to change. I just feel like that one, this was just such an obvious example over the last 10 years, like the shelf looks completely different.
You're spot on. And that's, the power of choice, power of education. That's, even things we're doing here to help make, health simple, is really that concept of, listen, if we just stack these little things year in and year out, we do better with, with our cheese, we do better with our butter, we do better with our eggs, and that's how we stack up things for health, instead of looking for this like one magical thing.
Yeah. I love it.
All right, what else you got?
Okay. We got a puppy question. I just moved here full time and my bulldog has severe allergies, skin, yeast in the ears, etc. He currently eats a high-grade turkey kibble food. Okay,
so again, we're going to go to diet here. We have my wife should be on for this one. She's really the master.
Yeah, maybe we'll have to do another.
Yeah, I'll give you the short summary of what she would probably say. One, need to go to a raw food diet. When we think about it, and so it doesn't sound like this new fad. Like, think about what an animal eats. What does a wolf eat? What does a dog eat? Like, what is their DNA, bred for? They literally eat carcasses. If they can catch it, they'll kill it. If they can eat roadkill, they'd eat that as well. They'll eat the bones. They'll eat the tissue. All of it. But that's what they eat. They're not used to these dried up, non-nutrient, lack of enzyme type foods. If they need extra enzymes, they chew a little grass. That usually settles their stomach, increases or balances out their pH. So, a raw food diet, absolutely important. Is it a little bit less convenient? Probably, right? Is it maybe a little bit more expensive? But you're talking about something that you love with every ounce of your body, right? So, and we're talking about fractional, unless you have 8 dogs, it's not fractional anymore in terms of the expense. But it's, so we got to feed them like what's built for them. And then even then, you got to find out there's certain foods out there that one dog might do better with chicken versus one might do better with beef. But I would say a raw diet, at bare minimum, there's a really good supplement. If you're just looking for a broad one, we use one that's called Canine Whole Body Support. It's in powder form. You do it by weight. And I just tell everyone to double the dose that they say. It's just so your dog plays catch up with vitamins and minerals. One of the challenges, so those situations, most of the time the animals are deficient in nutrients, vitamins, and minerals, and create a massive histamine response to just about everything. And that's why the dogs that's the yeast, that's the itchy in the paws. Sometimes it's really difficult. And when you do it, you change the little guy's lives, because you imagine scratching at something all day, 24/7. It's tough. And I know the emotion that we have as pet owners when our little puppies aren't feeling good. It's torturous to watch. And we have done it wrong, and we've done it better. We're doing it better than we ever have. But we, in the beginning, when we didn't have knowledge about food and the impact on allergies, I hate saying it, but it's truth. We would bring the dog in, get allergy shots and steroids and stuff. And just, it was a vicious down regulating, doggy life cycle. So, raw foods, start there. I often get the question, like, how should you wean? I'd wean them maybe about 2 weeks. And after that, just
alternate, wean them, have half kibble, half raw food, or okay.
Yeah, precisely. Yeah. And just like, so you're still mixing and blending. And then what my wife does is she doesn't blend it. She doesn't actually mix it at all. She puts it so the dog gets the choice. And you know what we find, Karen? There's no
choice of what, the raw food and the kibble?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So it's just pure choice. She doesn't have to confuse the dog or anything like that. She'll put the raw right next to the kibble, and the dog just eats the raw. Game over. So and she'll do it for a little while to see if the dog really needs to get the kibble back in life, and just it's game over. Dog starts eating raw, happy as can be.
Yeah, my puppy won't touch the kibble if there's anything else to eat.
Yeah.
She'll choose the raw food over that.
Yeah.
Yeah, all the time. Yeah. Okay, awesome. Yeah, we've got to get Caesar Malone on our show too, hey?
Yes.
Now that you've introduced me to his videos, I can't stop. All right, next question. How or can you, I guess, reverse extensive arterial calcification?
Yeah. So in a scenario like this, if it is extensive, there are ways. And so all of the strategies we've talked about on this show of down regulating inflammation. So first of all, we got to stop it in its tracks. And so the diet has to clean up. We've got to do a better job at, at just making sure we're not requiring the body to need more duct tape. So essentially that becomes a cholesterol issue. There's too much triglycerides in the body. There's too much of these LDLs, and they're building up in the arteries. And this can be very dangerous, quite frankly. But there are certain things that we can use. There are different types of, I use different protocols and different supplements. Do you hear my dog snoring? That's Toby tonight. He's yeah. Oh, well, I don't even notice until I see you kind of laughing at me. Anyways, there's different protocols that we can use, and I don't really want to throw them out there because we got to be very strategic on how we do it, and especially if there's any other medications. So whoever's asking that question, there are possibilities. They're safe and effective. Yet you're probably going to want to get with someone like myself who's dealt with it, that can walk down this path. There's not like a big cleaning sweep here, but there are certain things that can help reabsorb some. If your body can make it, and keep this in mind, because you're going to be told otherwise. If your body can make it, your body can absorb it.
Yeah.
And keep that in mind. We see that all the time in our health world. And as long as we're willing to use the strategies and time as our friends, then we can have good success with that. So find someone like myself, or, a guy or girl out there that is doing this type of work that will take time to get you through that. But on your end of it, who's ever asking that question, and I'm guessing you already are, if you're here listening, that you're starting to clean up your diet, that you're looking at things that are causing inflammation, and maybe even starting to do a little bit of intermittent fasting. And that's one of the strategies we use as well.
Yeah, awesome. And what about if someone wants to, if this person or anyone out there wants to do a consult with you, they don't have to be, you do virtual consults all around the country?
Yeah. So just like we're doing now, Karen, we can do virtual just like this. And this has really turned out into a great opportunity to really, connect, in a one-on-one situation like this. So for anything, gut issues and cholesterol issues and heart issues and ADD and ADHD, if there's something that you want to, achieve better health with, yes, we can do it. And even labs. So over the next, several weeks, 6 weeks, 7 weeks, especially with everyone that just completed the cleanse, a lot of them will be doing their annual labs. And then we'll sit down just like this, doing a virtual consult, reviewing all their labs, et cetera. And we can send labs out to you.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. Well, I'll put the details, because we can just get in touch with Balance Health Studio, and
correct. You can just reach out to reach out to the clinic and the Balance Health Studio, whether it be, maybe you can put like a phone or an email or whatever.
I'll put a phone and an email number down. Yeah, for sure. And as you're saying, really, any of the topics we talk about on this show, like we have on hormones or weight loss, or, ADHD, do you kids and adults?
Yeah. So a lot of times obviously with the kids, usually the parents are with them, which is great.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, so we see a lot of that. And it's, and again, that's not something you need to be in office for. And there's a lot of opportunities to, especially in situations like that, to have a conversation. And those are coming up more and more, the ADD and ADHD. They're kind of almost like especially this past 2 years, it's almost like there's this resurgence of them all. The anxiety, of course, and all of these things we can do Zoom, Karen. And there are some scenarios where, like, I may suggest that, listen, part of your protocol, I'd like you to go see a chiropractor. If you're local, I have you come see me. Or maybe I'll send you out for an acupuncturist. But that's the kind of conversation that we have. We do a deep dive and try to do our best to create strategies for how you move, how you eat, how you think, a little bit of it all. And of course, going after the red flags first.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay. We've got another question here. There's lots of talk about 5G technology being rolled out and possible airline interference. Mm-hmm. How does that 5G frequency impact our bodies? And is there anything we can do to protect it?
Yeah, great question. And I know as soon as you start hearing that, people are like, oh, you're weirdos. You guys are conspiracy theorists. But at the end of the day, it goes like this, Karen. We are just electrical. We are electrical units that everything in our body works off an electrical current. That's hence electrolytes, sodium, potassium, magnesium, chloride. That's all we are, is these electrical units. And then we start putting more electrical energy waves floating around, currents floating through the air, and we'd be fools to think that they aren't affecting us. And there is data and research to say. So the best part of that question was not whether or not 5G is affecting us. Yes, it is. It does. And the more of these, smart homes that we have, TVs and phones and all of these Wi-Fi things, the more disruption to human function we're having. And I think it's hard to quantify. And that's why a lot of people aren't necessarily sold on, oh, this affects that, because you don't like walk by a 5G tower and fall down and be like, oh my God, I can't move. It's not like kryptonite for Superman, but it's the compounding effect over time that is really happening. So what do we do about it? One, you get all the inflammation out of your body. That's critically important, because when we're inflamed, if you guys are just listening to this, be hard, but basically, I'm just, if you're the way that your cells work, they're trying to communicate, and they're trying to come together and communicate and create these electrical currents and firing, and then they send messages throughout the course of the body. When we have inflammation, that doesn't align well. It's hard to get the communication internally in the body. Now then you put another energetic wave in there like 5G. Then it becomes even more difficult to have. So get your body clean. There are some phenomenal things like earthing every day. Literally put your feet on the earth, get outside and get some sun. These things that we're like, again, making health simple. These are the strategies that really do work. You can spend some money and get a grounding mat, or get yourself, an EMF or a PEMF machine. We're talking about spending some big bucks. We're talking about spending $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 for these things. Now, I'm an advocate of it. Do we have one? Yes, we do. That's how important it is. That's so, over the years, that's where my wife and I invest a lot of our money into things that can make us healthier and more vital, into our 50s or later, for that matter. But there are other things like getting sunshine every day, like putting your feet on the ground, eating real food, eating whole foods, eating grounding foods. What are grounding foods? Eat something that comes from a root, eat a beet. Like, these are the things that are balancing out these energies. And then every opportunity that you have to turn your Wi-Fi off and your Bluetooth off, do it. Yeah. So we have to make these conscious decisions. I have friends right now, Karen, that are instead of creating smart homes, are creating dumb homes.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Right. So they're going back to old school plug-in Wi-Fi's and stuff like that, so they don't have that currently here. I haven't done that. And yet I think about it all the time, especially if I'm in front of it, like on a regular basis, or, several hours in a row. I think any one of us who has been on our phone for like a half an hour knows there's something funky going on there. I don't think it takes a scientist.
Well, I mean, things like that. I mean, even proximity, like have it on speaker or use headphones,
If you're ever like, anyone is in my office and is ever doubtful of how these are life suckers from us, I'll do a muscle test on them and they fail every time.
What do you mean?
I put the cell phone in their hand and I muscle test over here and it goes weak.
Really?
Not sometimes, all the time.
Oh, wow. And we're on them so much.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, it's great question. Great awareness.
I mean, because we can't avoid it. As you said, even if you do these things in your home, it's out there. I think being scared of it probably doesn't help either. But if we just do the bits we can control, it helps.
Yeah. And here's what's interesting. So 20, 30 years ago, it was no big deal to drive by a power plant and say, well, I wouldn't purchase a home over there.
Yeah.
Right. And now, and back then they said, well, you're a weirdo. That doesn't do anything. Even though you'd be standing under it and hearing it going,
you can hear it. I know.
And now now it's common knowledge. Don't buy a house near power lines. No. Do not have them crossing over your house. Common knowledge.
Yeah.
We just haven't opened our eyes because we can't tangibly understand what 5G is.
Yeah.
So that's it. So we will come to a point in a couple of years, and I don't think it's going to take much longer than that, where it's legitimately quantified in how it's sucking the life out of us.
Yeah. On that note, well, let's there are our main questions here. Let's circle back to the HPA axis. Yeah,
let's dive into that. So the workshop I was at, it was all about this HP axis and dysregulations and some of the primary things that was happening or what was causing dysregulation. And of course, we talked about the spike protein and the COVID, but I'm going to kind of bypass that today because I want to talk about some other things that are really taken for granted. And I see so much of in my office, and it's really the impact of things like anesthesia, of a whiplash, of medications and drugs, and like headbutting a soccer ball, all these subtleties, little things. So let me start by I'll do a brief description of what the HP axis is. The H stands for the hypothalamus gland and P for the pituitary gland. The pituitary gland releases a couple hormones, and those hormones can communicate with all of your very, very important other glands, things like your thyroid gland, your adrenal glands, and your ovaries or testes if you're a guy. So for example, every thyroid case is really also a pituitary case, and I'll explain why. TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone, is made not in your thyroid, it's made in your pituitary. And it is your pituitary that is telling your thyroid what to do. So if the dysfunction happens on the thyroid, and I see this a lot on labs, I'll see that there's a TSH is just going haywire, but the other hormones are okay. That tells me there's upstream. It's not a thyroid issue anymore. It is actually a pituitary. So there are things in this. So the HP axis, the hypothalamus and pituitary, is the mother of your hormones, the mother of the endocrine system. This is telling all our bodies what to do. And here's where we're seeing a lot of dysfunction start that I literally think is just being overlooked massively. And yet I've had a lot of conversations with people in functional nutrition and functional medicine that are doing this type of work. And for years, we've scratched our head wondering like because there's no one test for the HP axis. There's no like high blood test or low blood test. You have to pick up the science clinically. So there are things like anesthesia. In that right there, Karen, it's significant.
Yeah, what are we talking about there? Like any anesthesia?
But it doesn't matter. Well, not like, so there's general and then there's local. Local would be like you just did it on your thumb and you do a little surgery there, but
what about that?
Et cetera.
Yeah, so that's okay. That's a different thing.
That's different. That's usually an injectable. And then there's when you inhale.
Yeah.
And that type of anesthesia is when you go out. Now, ultimately, I'm going to simplify this.
They do it in the drip sometimes, don't they?
And in a drip, yeah. It's more, I think it's still more popular through a mask. Yeah, I think that's still I haven't gone under them, 35 years.
I've only a couple of times, luckily, but it's always been in a
Okay.
I haven't had a anyway.
So either way, here's the fascinating part about it. So what happens in that moment here? It inhibits your brain to communicate to your central nervous system. It shuts down your neurotransmitter communication.
Yeah, crazy.
Yeah, crazy. So it is crazy enough, and we have to stop and think about this. And again, I'm not against it. So just so you know, I'm not pitching a case for don't ever do anesthesia. I do think we have to start to think about these things and really have strategies to overcome them. Because what happens when that HP axis is out of regulation? Here's the things that it affects: mood, hormone, appetite regulation. So this is what the HP does. It regulates your appetite. I have some people that, because they've had a couple of C-sections, and after their C-sections, they have ravenous appetites, only eat healthy food, but can't stop eating.
Wow.
That's an HP axis dysregulation. And there's no blood test on the sun. And that poor individual will get diagnosed as being crazy because they'll say there's nothing wrong with you. It doesn't show up in your blood work anywhere. So, and there are ways that we help reset this in very specific type of supplementation. But really tonight, I want to bring the awareness, because if that is off, hormones, mood, fatigue, sleeping issues, out of circadian rhythm. Think about it for a second, Karen, that whether it be intravenous or via a mask and a gas, something happens where the dysregulation, so your brain cannot talk to your body, where then they can take a knife, cut you open, pull out a hip, put a new one in, and you don't even know. And what the body happens, so what we're recognizing clinically is after that happens, you wake back up. And usually the moment people wake and they come out of anesthesia and they wake up, it's a very emotional moment. They're super laughy or super crying. And they'd have no idea why. Then because also your emotions are regulated by your HP axis. That's what regulates hormones. So typically what happens, you wake up and the hypothalamus pituitary gland recognizes, wait a minute, we have a 4-inch cut over here, a 3-inch cut over there. We're missing a body part over here, and there's a new foreign object in our body. We missed something, and it goes into sympathetic dominance and or fight or flight. And that's where the dysregulation starts to take place massively. Now, it might not show up obvious for people because we're talking about subtleties, but this is a huge, huge part of this hormone world. Now, this can happen it's not just anesthesia. It can happen from emotional trauma. It can happen from where we just talked about that earlier. That was an emotional trauma that took place. Maybe the anesthesia took place, was part of it as well.
Yeah.
It's hard to say in that particular.
Yeah, she said both, a major surgery and emotional trauma.
Yes. And most of the times surgeries are the result of emotional trauma.
Yeah. Well,
So when I say, no, it's because I had my shoulder trauma, but your emotions drive you to take action.
Yeah.
On your surgeries. Yeah, you might say your pain does, but where does oxytocin come from? Hypothalamus gland. That's the one that's a pain reliever for the body, makes you feel good, makes you happy. So when we're out of balance of that HP axis, so your body wakes up in these weird states, and all of a sudden there's this whole dysregulation. And one of the reasons I really want to bring this to the forefront is that I see so many people that have what they call elective, and they think because it's elective that it doesn't mean we have to address anything else. And that's farthest from the truth. Yeah. So if you have an elective surgery, maybe you're getting a tummy tuck or something, and they put a 14-inch scar across your waistline, and your body has no idea how it got there, trust me, there's some dysregulation going on. And there's some of the things. So those are some of the things I see in the clinic. And, I'll use acupuncture and we'll use adjustments, and there's ways to re-regulate these things. And we use certain supplements for the hypothalamus gland and for the pituitary. But I wanted to kind of throw that out there because we spent an entire 8 hours on talking about all the symptoms involved and clinically what has showed up. And the gentleman did a phenomenal job at just laying out how critically important and overlooked this HP axis is, and as practitioners, we always know that's it. So I'll give you a simple example. If your HP axis is out of balance, often you will find yourself very emotional, and people are like, no, I'm not very emotional. It'll be the emotion that you're watching like a commercial, and there'll be like this puppy dog thing going on. And next thing you know, your eyes are welling up, and like you're kind of crying, and you don't even know why, because you're not sad, but you're crying. Dysregulation.
Wait. When it comes to watching things like that on TV, is that always HP axis?
No, it's when you know that you have wait a minute, I shouldn't.
Sometimes those puppy shows are like.
I mean more like when you know it, someone just gives you where it's almost like it's dysregulated. I mean, it's a hyper or hypo. Someone says something really kind to you, and instead of just taking it warm-heartedly, you well up. You're about to cry because it's out of balance. Okay. So real important part in seeing. And then we did dive in a little bit about the spike protein, about from the vaccine and the impact that the vaccine is having on this dysregulation.
So is that the same as from COVID though? That has the spike protein as well.
Yeah,
so is it the same in terms of dysregulation? If you get the virus or the vaccine, is it the same?
Right now, clinically, I would say that the answer is kind of yes. Yeah. So that, so if it is creating some of that dysregulation with that spike protein. And it was real fascinating. We have talked about, I use a supplement in my office called RNA, ribonucleic acid. And RNA is one of the things that's used for your brain your body to communicate from cell to cell. It's your cerebellum loves it. Is kind of a fuel. And what we're talking about with these mRNA, that's a messenger RNA. That's what an mRNA means. They're sending messages back and forth. And a lot of times what these spike proteins do is they inhibit the proper messages. And then there's an overloading of this cytokine storm that we get from COVID or that we get from the vaccine. And then as that happens, there's dysregulation. Again, remember I said there's trauma. And it could be emotional, physical, chemical, could be bacteria, could be an infection in the body that can dysregulate. So having an understanding, wow, I wonder if this has been dysregulated, or can I get this reset? Which then really leads into the whole conversation. And coming in April, I'm excited to kind of announce, I'm teaching an 8-hour seminar to the doctors about Longhaul Syndrome, which is really interesting. You can't really,
it's something people, I feel like, people are really scared of right now.
They are, and it's really interesting, Karen. So the bummer is, it's a forbidden word.
Yeah,
it really is. I can't talk about it on Facebook. We can't, like promote it in any of our stuff. So I won't be able to come out in public where I normally would, talking about long hauler syndrome and stuff like that. I don't even know if I should be doing this now, but nonetheless we are. So anyways,
especially not how to help it, really.
Yeah. So you just can't talk about it. It's like, you can't even you can't put that word in print and then like put it into these different social media engines, et cetera. I can't put things up on, Google and stuff like that. But anyways, what's really fascinating, and I'll give you some tips and what's going to, or like cliff notes of what I'm going to be talking about in the seminar. What's being massively overlooked in clinics right now is the impact on the adrenal glands. Yeah, so if you've had COVID, we have to address your adrenal glands, period. They take on the brunt of the battle, meaning the actual battle itself. And we started off earlier talking about how we've been under stress for a couple of years here. So what I really want to say, I'm going to kind of keep this short just for time's sake here. When we get exposed to COVID and so the virus enters the body, and then our white blood cells come out and go, all right, let's get her on. Let's go to battle. And the white blood cells and the viruses, they fight, and they're trying to take over the DNA and get into the mitochondria and replicate and all this stuff. And white blood cells say, we're not having this. So it ends up, there's a big battlefield, and a lot of our white blood cells will be killed off, massive amounts, like millions of them, up to sometimes over 1 million cells per second will be in exchange. Yeah, now, at the end of this, when we have survived, hopefully, this virus, and it's all gone and it's done its head. So imagine if that went on. Let's just say you had the battlefield for 4 days, and every second, millions of cells were turning over in your body. So we make, I think it's about 2 million red blood cells per second. And the reason this is so relative is that you're making those red blood cells with what you're putting in your mouth and the way that your body can assimilate those nutrients. And this is what's so important. So during that time, as we're making 2 million red blood cells per second, your body's in an all-out war, using all its resources, becoming depleted. Most people are not even eating, and they're fighting off a virus with a fever. You're making weaker cells. So essentially, you're replicating cells, remaking your forearms and your kidneys and your eyeballs and your hair with weaker components, with weaker parts. And now we get through, the virus is gone, and we go, I made it. I survived. But no one's really cleaning house here. No one's revitalizing the system. So your adrenal glands are the ones that were in that fight or flight for 2 years in the fight, wondering, when am I going to get it? And all of a sudden the fight is here, and you had the fight, and they get their butt kicked, and they're going to regulate many, many things, including things like blood pressure. So we're seeing people with the virus, with the vaccines, whatever it may be, have blood pressure issue changes. We're having inflammatory things taking place in the body. So all of these things, it's multifaceted. And one of the things we did, we talked a lot about this, I think we have, like, what do we really need to do? We need to clean the body out. We have to. So imagine another analogy would be that, you have a fire in your house, that's the virus, and you put the fire out, but it burnt for 10 minutes. And now you put it out and you're like, yay, but now nothing functions the same. Your TV is toast, your couch is a mess.
Ash everywhere.
Ash everywhere. And the challenge is no one's talking about it. I'm not gonna say no one. No one's saying, hey, this is what we need to do. You need to go clean your living room out. You got to toss that couch out and get a new couch brought in. And if we keep replicating cells on top of this bad system, that is how disease and dysfunction happens in the human body. So that's a little bit of insight of what I'll be talking to the doctors in April about. We have to help our patients, and that's all of us, get clean. What's really cool is that this year, Omicron kind of came flying through while everyone was on the cleanse. So a lot of people got it while they're on the cleanse. It was like this perfect time, and they zipped through it 1 day, 3, 4, 5 days, whatever it may be. And now it's out of their bodies. And now anyone who's listened to this, so just hear me out. You need adrenal support. You absolutely positively have to support the adrenal gland and the way that it's functioning. So we have to support it with some herbals and also some vitamins and minerals on top of all the things you've ever heard about the immune system. And we've got to start to get your body to start flush things out, because your adrenal glands, if they stay weak, they won't be able to signal things like your white blood cells. So your vulnerability for getting fatigued, for getting breakdown, for your skin changes, for this aging process to enhance itself, that's what we're talking about. So everyone needs a little bit of adrenal support. And I think most of the time, most of the cases that I see that are long haulers, Karen,
yeah,
I don't even know that I would say that any of them are any healthier or unhealthier, quite frankly. I think collectively it's people who didn't do anything different.
Yeah.
They just came back to normal, and it's not normal. And I think that's my simple in this, we literally could spend an hour on how to do this, but my simple explanation tonight would be, even if you've got past it and you think it's through, it's time for you to clean your body out. If you clean it out and you're like, well, it didn't make a big difference, keep cleaning, because you are making 2 million red blood cells per second during that time of distress. And all the other time that your body wasn't functioning good, you were making bad cells. So you got to get all those cells out, and they live for about 120 days. So it's really about a 120-day window. And like, if I was getting technical, say about a 120-day window of committing yourself to really stepping it up, to really leveling up. And then most likely you're going to be done with any of that stuff.
Yeah. Awesome. I think it's good to talk about strategies. A lot of, like, if you do see any long hauler stuff in the media, it's always, well, then there's nothing you can do about it ever. And it's going to be like that forever. Right. It seems to be talked about as if it's like a permanent side effect of COVID.
Yeah. And I understand why they say that. And it's simply because they don't have the strategy of, so they're only thinking of symptom and disease. And if there's no symptoms and no disease, they're not thinking about optimal function. They're not thinking about, how do I clean the body out? How do I clean those little receptors that are supposed to receive vitamin C and D and zinc and all the different hormones sharing back and forth? But those receptors are full of those ashes that when your house is burning down, there's junk in there. And we got to get them cleared out so the body can start to communicate better.
Because really, you can have similar effects. Some people will have similar effects from other viruses, right? Like kind of post-viral fatigues. I mean, is that similar?
Yeah, when you start to add up all listen, hepatitis is a virus, Epstein-Barr is a virus. So we know that when those are around, we have massive strategies in play. Like, how do we go about addressing these, knowing that they have the potential for long-term impact, and then you just develop a strategy around it. And the good thing, even those ones I just mentioned there, in the past, we thought those were, oh, we can't do anything about them. And now we know there's definitely things we can do about those.
Yeah. Awesome. Cool. All right. Well, we're going to move on to our last question. What is going to be our one action that our listeners take to move them towards their goal of becoming superhuman?
Well, the action is going to be talk nice to yourself, or talk better. Okay. Talk better.
Even to be aware of how you're talking.
Yeah. Talk better. It is something I see every single day. And there are times when I'm like, oh man, I don't know if I can help this person, because their words are so consistent or so powerful in the way that they use them. And they're so like emotional when they use them. But the beauty, if you change those words, you'll change your life. When you ask your questions a little bit better. So ask good questions of your body, talk nice to yourself, talk better. If that was just your only goal, this is going to be an awesome year. I still think this is going to be an awesome year.
I love it. Awesome. All right. Well, thanks everybody for tuning in. We'll be back same time, same place next week for another episode of the Health Made Simple show.
Awesome. And of course, good to see everyone, and continue to do your best. Absolutely. We're going to take deliberate action for the mind, your body, overall wellness. Y'all be awesome.